Today on Upfront, my extended interview with Democratic candidate for governor Mary Burke. Next, Burke on Act 10. Which parts would she keep and which parts would she repeal? Plus, her response to the release of the John Doe documents. Prosecutors claiming that Governor Walker was at the center of a criminal scheme to skirt election laws. And she's critical of the governor's jobs record, but could Burke do better? And how?
Covering the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Up Front with Mike Goucher.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Up Front. We begin today with a flurry of developments in the race for governor. In the last several days, we've seen a new TV ad, new revelations in the John Doe investigation, and new jobs numbers. 3 weeks ago, Governor Walker was our guest for the half hour. Today, we're joined by Democratic candidate for governor Mary Burke. And thanks again for being with us today.
Mike, it's my pleasure.
Let's talk about the week that was. Begin with the John Doe investigation and the release of these documents that say prosecutors had a theory that the governor was involved in a scheme to circumvent state finance laws, campaign finance laws. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it's disappointing. You know, as I travel around the state, I remember back a couple of months, I sat down with a group in a diner in Brillion, and I asked them over a cup of coffee, I said, what do you want to see in a governor? And the first answer that came is, I want a governor that I can trust, a governor that's working for us. And so when you now hear about investigations into a possible criminal scheme by Scott Walker and his supporters, I'm disappointed, because it's not serving the people of Wisconsin and what they want in a governor. And as governor, I want to make sure that I have the highest level of integrity. I'm going to demand the same thing for the people that work for me. And when I'm governor, people will be able to trust what I say, what I do, and I'm going to be working every day for them. I think that's how we're going to restore the confidence in politics and in politicians.
The governor says 2 judges have essentially said there's nothing there. And that he has categorically denied these accusations, that they're false. It's a partisan witch hunt. Do you intend to make it an issue in this campaign?
Well, I want to focus on getting my message out to the people of Wisconsin, the type of governor that I would be, what I believe in, how I'm going to move Wisconsin's economy forward. So it's not going to be a focus of my campaign, but certainly this investigation should run its course. The people of Wisconsin are owed that. But in my campaign, I'm going to be focusing on making sure they get to know me and the type of governor that I'll be.
On Friday, the governor, his campaign released an ad, and it has you as part of a deck of cards, but it links you closely to Governor Doyle. And with the basic message being that during the Doyle-Burke administration, 133,000 jobs were lost, taxes were hiked. How do you distance yourself from Jim Doyle, or do you feel that's necessary in this race?
Well, it seems like Scott Walker wishes he was running against Jim Doyle and not Mary Burke, and I am a very different candidate. You know, business executive with actual experience, balancing budgets, creating jobs, meeting a payroll, starting my own business. I'm a very different person than Jim Doyle was. I am very proud of the years that I served the people of the state of Wisconsin as Commerce Secretary, but out of a 30-year career, the 2 years that I spent as Commerce Secretary are a very small portion of what I bring to the table as governor. And so I'm going to be talking about who I am, the background I have, my experience as an executive with Trek Bicycle, growing jobs there, growing Trek's business in Europe from $3 million to over $50 million. That's how we're going to move Wisconsin's economy forward. So I'll focus on my track record and certainly am very proud of the time that I spent at Commerce.
There were new jobs numbers out this week. It showed that Wisconsin had 28,000 more private sector jobs in 2013. Your campaign immediately pounced on that. You said these are terrible numbers. They're the worst in the Midwest. But why would people be convinced that you could do better? What is it about your background? If they look at your record as Commerce Secretary, for instance, what would lead them to have confidence that you could do better than this governor?
Sure. Well, the job numbers this week were really disappointing. Frankly, they're lousy. That's, I think, what the State Journal called them. And to be dead last out of 10 Midwestern states, I know that we can do better. And as I travel around the state and I see the things that are going on, but also the possibilities, I know that we can do better. But we have to have a plan for doing that. When Scott Walker ran for governor in 2010 and promised 250,000 jobs, his jobs plan, it was 4 pages long. And frankly, if you took out the pictures of himself, it was closer to 2. You know, I have seen 8th grade term papers that have more thought put into them than that. So when I make a promise to make sure that Wisconsin is a top 10 thriving economy and that we're going to be showing our progress and having benchmarks and being accountable for that, I've put together a real jobs plan, the Invest for Success, on how we're going to do this. And it lays out in detail how we're going to get that done, but also lays out 5 core strategies on how we're going to do that. To put together this jobs plan, I sat down with experts in different areas. And one person that I talked to, and one person who has commented on this plan, John Turinas, who is a business owner in West Bend, Seriograph, he has said that this is the best jobs plan that he has seen from a candidate ever. So this is the game plan, not only on what I'm running on, but what I'm going to do day one as governor.
But I want to go back to your years as Commerce Secretary, because the governor fired off a tweet after you were very critical about the jobs growth in the state. He sent out a tweet, and it says, "More jobs created in my first 3 years than there were new net jobs in 8 years under Governor Doyle." And they've also, his campaign has also released numbers that says, if you look at comparable periods, about 3 years for the governor, 2.5 years for you as Commerce Secretary, they've created twice as many jobs as you did during that time. Again, why should people be convinced that you can do better?
Sure. Well, the unemployment rate when I was Commerce Secretary was 4.8%, which is significantly better than it is now.
Although
but
higher
also,
than the national average, correct?
Very slightly higher. But you have to realize, we have come out of a recession since Scott Walker has been in office. And every state has created jobs. The problem is we've created less jobs here in Wisconsin than any other state in the Midwest, and 35th in terms of the country. Now, if you look at Scott Walker's record during that same recession time in Milwaukee County, when he became county executive, the unemployment rate was 6.6%. When he left, 9.9%. So he should be answering for his jobs record during that time of the recession. So I'll put up my jobs record at Commerce against his anytime, particularly if you compare equal periods of time at which our national economy had greatly suffered.
Very briefly, there are those who think that, frankly, a governor can only do so much anyhow, that the slow growth in this state in terms of job creation is the result of slow-growing industries that populate this state. What do you think about that?
Well, I think, first of all, if that was true, Scott Walker shouldn't have made a promise to create 250,000 jobs if he didn't think that it was within the control of the governor to do that. But I think there's short-term things you can do. There's also long-term things you can do. And I've seen that as an executive at Trek Bicycle, how Trek grew jobs and what was part of their decision to grow jobs. Short-term, in terms of how a governor influences that, well, I would have made sure that we took the $810 million to build high-speed rail here in Wisconsin. That would have created thousands of construction jobs, and we know that we lost manufacturing jobs when Talgo left Milwaukee because it was no longer going to be building those rail cars. So that's a short-term impact on our state jobs, and those thousands of jobs are just the direct impact. You also have the indirect impact from that. And long-term, we have to make sure our workforce training and education is aligned around the needs of industry, and the governor has a real role in that. I talked to a business person in Waukesha recently who told me they wanted to add and expand their capacity, but they have not been able to find 2 engineers in a field that they need, along with a welder. Well, I hear this as I go all over the state. As governor, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring together the leaders of our education institutions and say to them, challenge them and say, you know what? We have to have more engineers in this field because that's what industry is saying. So whether we need to have 500 more a year or 250 more a year, then let's put together the plan on how we're going to get that, and let's understand where we have to make the investments in order to get that done. The governor can show that type of leadership to make sure that we are aligned around the needs of industry, and I show that in my Invest for Success.
Let me take a quick break. We'll come back with Mary Burke in just a moment. We'll talk about the same-sex marriage debate and her stance on Act 10. That's when Up Front continues.
Up Front with Mike Goucher, brought to you by American Transmission Company.